Yeah, there we are.
Okay. Uh, Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Sri Chinmoy Disciple Experience. And today we're interviewing Dhanyavada Warren Green, a New Zealand Australian disciple. And welcome, Dhanyavada.
Thank you, Sunirmalya. Very good to see you.
I wanted to ask, let's get right into it and just ask about your early childhood. I guess, are you one of those wonderful souls that as a 3-year-old, spent hours meditating under a Bodhi tree or something like that? Or how did your early childhood go?
You almost described me there. Yeah, I had brothers and sisters and everything, and a fairly normal family, except for the fact that I was adopted into that family. But yeah, I spent most of my time hanging around outside, staring contemplatively at flowers. And yeah, so
And were you a bit of a? I was just going to say, were you a bit of a loner, or did you?
I was
You
a bit of a loner. Yeah, yeah.
easily.
Wasn't much interested in making lots of friends. I had a few kind of neighborhood friends that I'd hang out with sometimes, but yeah, something in my nature I just liked my own company, and especially the company of nature. So yeah, love my brothers and sisters. They were great.
And I've heard that your father was a church minister. How did that pan out for you?
He was pretty strict upbringing, and constantly we grew up in a quite a small community up in the north of New Zealand. So we're under the watchful eye of the community all of the time, and I was a bit of a rebel as a kid.
Sounds like
So
a culty start.
yeah,
It
yeah.
sounds like you started in a cult, mate.
Yeah. So, but I quite enjoyed church and going to church and listening to Dad talk, and yeah, it was. I didn't mind all of that. Pretty strict rules though. Like we had, because we were being watched by the community, we had to behave, and I wasn't so good at behaving.
Give us an example. What sort of rules were you not so good at adhering to?
Um, oh gosh, let's see. Oh well, part of the thing was because I used to be alone a lot and stuff like that. I'd kind of get myself into neighbours' backyards, playing around in their garden, or the big one is we had a huge field out the back of our property, which also backed onto the church, because we had the manse, which was the house attached to the church. Huge field out the back, and I
Mm-hmm.
quite like going out there and sitting quietly and lighting matches, which which
Okay.
one day
And
turned into a large fire. So
lovely.
yeah,
Can I ask, did you
getting
feel
Dad in
straight up
trouble.
that you had an affinity with Christ and had an affinity with, I guess, living a spiritual life?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I mean, I was always esoteric. I was always kind of like feeling like there were things in life that weren't explained, and quite interested in those things, those sort of mysterious things, like, and especially for me, having been adopted and not really identifying as closely with the family that I was in. I always felt like a bit of a foreigner. So it was always trying to find out,
Mm.
who am I, and where do I really belong? That was kind of a big question for me. Um, and yeah, I always had a very fond feeling for Christ. Um, there were pictures of him in the church, and I would quite often sit there and looking at them and kind of almost talking to them, really. Um, but I didn't
Is,
really.
is this from, what
I
age are we
don't think.
talking about here, Daniel?
Oh, um, this is like at the age of 5 and 6. You know.
Wow.
Um, Yeah. And it just went through my whole life. Yeah. Mm.
And when did it really start to, reach its kind of crescendo? When did it become the most important thing in your life?
The I guess probably it really started becoming important when I was in my around about 25, in my mid 20s. I left home really young, um, about the age of 15, and because I wanted to be independent,
Wow,
basically.
that's that's very young to be leaving home, and you must have had some kind of crisis there to be
Yeah,
walking at
yeah.
15,
Well,
surely.
I didn't really like anyone boxing me in, you know. Uh, and it seemed as I got more into my teens, I just became more and more resistant to authority. I really didn't like school at all, um, and I I didn't really find the subjects we learnt at school all that interesting. Although I loved biology and I loved writing English, but most of it I didn't really find applied to me very much. So yeah, I left
What
home
was
when I was
the appeal? What was the appeal from biology?
nature again.
Okay.
It was getting in with nature, getting with animals and insects and investigating them. So yeah.
And so then in your mid-20s, when did you become a disciple then of Sri Chinmoy?
27, but at 25 I had a major
And
crisis. I basically was in a very well-paid job working in the music industry, earning a huge sum of money for a 25-year-old, and I had pretty much everything, and lots of friends going out to gigs and stuff every night, and kind of realized
what are you
I've
doing?
got everything.
What sort of what was your job that you were doing that was in the music industry?
Um,
What sort of work was it?
I worked in a record store called Sounds Unlimited, and we were importing records into New Zealand and selling them and promoting them out to the public and to radio stations and all of that sort of thing. And it was at the time it was probably one of the most influential record stores in New Zealand. So it's great. So we were getting free concert tickets all the time, and I was working as a DJ on a student radio station for a while, and also as a roadie. So I was
Fantastic.
going around, setting up bands. It was a great life, but it also involved a lot of
So,
alcohol and a lot of drugs. So
so is that where the crisis came from? Because it sounds as though
yeah,
you had everything that that anyone would want in their mid-20s.
yeah, yeah. That's what I thought, and then I just kind of looked at myself one day and I thought, I feel totally empty. I've got everything materially. I'm supposed to be really happy, and I actually feel completely empty. And I felt lousy, you know. And yeah, and also I was quite sick. I blacked out at work one day, and I went and saw the doctor, and he said, yeah, well, give it another couple of months of the lifestyle you're living, and you're going to be hospitalised. So there was a serious health issue there as well. And that made me
And
really
is the
look at
health issue
myself.
just coming from the health issues coming from alcohol and drugs, Dhanyavada? Is that
And cigarettes and late nights, no sleep. Uh, yeah, burning the candle at both ends. Yeah, yeah.
so? You go see the doctor. The doctor says if you don't do something soon, you're going to finish up in hospital. So what happens next?
Right.
You start reading? You start reading, or you go to a meditation class, or what happened for you then?
Well, interestingly, it was a bit of a synchronicity. My girlfriend at the time was studying philosophy at university, and she was at the beginning of her thesis years. And she asked me if I'd be a guinea pig and try and practice this thing called meditation, which I'd never really heard of, and write a daily diary. So she threw a few books my way, And I thought, well, this is great because I think this looks like something I need. I need to change my life definitely. And started reading these books on meditation, and got one in particular from the library, which happened to be from the TM Center, Transcendental Meditation. And I started practicing that. And immediately I felt a connection with it, with meditation. Yeah. And then I went.
So I guess you've got yourself a mantra, and now you're meditating every day, and you've hooked up with
I
another
went along
cult,
to the
and
TM Center, paid the money, and which I wasn't so. It was I think it was to get started, to get your mantra. I think it was a week's wages. So paid that, got my mantra, yep, and actually when I practiced it at home the first time, I just had a doozy of an experience, and that pretty much is what hooked me in for the rest of my life.
That one experience.
That one experience, yep. It's even today I kind of recall it, and it's yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, you have to tell us. Give us a short lowdown on that experience, right, please.
Oh God, it was just, I was just sitting there listening to a bit of reggae music and repeating my mantra to myself and trying to get it all working. Yeah, as you do. And I just slipped into this undescribable state. Any words I put on it kind of just limit it, really. But it was, I guess it was the unity experience, where I felt I was completely unaware of my, you're right, completely unaware of my physical being, and I was part of everything, and it was, incredibly profound, and it just seemed to go on and on and on, but when I came out of it, it was probably only, I guess a few minutes or a few seconds even. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. And so then what happened? I mean, how do things evolve to the point where you find the center and all that sort of business?
Yeah. Well, from that moment on, my life definitely started changing for the better. I started dropping away from friends. I pretty much instantly was able to give up drugs, alcohol, cigarettes with no problems at all, because I had this different reference point now. But the one thing is, I didn't really get along with the TM idea of it. Just seemed to be too much about money for my liking. So I dropped out of that and thought, the mantra thing's really basic. I'm pretty sure I can keep doing that on my own. So I kept on doing it on my own. But the only thing is that after about 6 months or so of practice, I started getting this incredibly sharp stabbing pain in my third eye. It was intense, and it just continued to intensify. Tried all sorts of different things, read a lot about, different effects of meditation, different meditation techniques, and it got pretty much to the point where it seemed like I was going to have to stop meditating. It was the only way to get rid of this pain. But that
You're
wasn't
having
really
that pain
during
meditation?
Yeah, during. Yep. Pretty much the moment I'd sit and focus, it would start coming in. Yeah.
What do you attribute that to now? In hindsight, with hindsight, what do you think it was about?
Being too much in the mind, mate. I was already quite a thinker and quite mental, quite intellectual. And it just that focus of the mantra, I was just like holding on to it with my mind, penetrating it with my mind, and so it was all of the energy was going in up there. No heart in it at all at that stage. Yeah. Also,
and so then what happened? How did you find this?
Well, as you know, I had this connection with Christ, and a friend of mine had given me this beautiful little sort of picture of Christ, and I kept it beside my bed. And so one day I thought, well, I was just so angry that the thought that I'd had to stop meditating and I'd have to go. I just couldn't believe it. So I sort of sat there and I gave this ultimatum. I said, look, if I'm going out for a walk, and when I come back, I'm going to sit here and I want to get some answers as to what to do with my life, because I was pretty desperate. I was kind of distraught really at the thought of having to give it up. So I went for a walk,
sounds great.
out on the, eyes down, kind of feeling really just in despair really, and walking along Dominion Road in Auckland, and this little piece of paper kind of blows across the footpath in front of me. I could bend over to pick it up. Free meditation classes, Sri Chinmoy Centre. And it just, straight away, it was just like, this is it. This has got to be it. And went home, phoned up straight away, and booked myself in for that evening's meditation class. And
goodness.
Yeah, went along, and God, in those days in the Auckland Centre, it was above a canoe shop just very close to my home. And you go up the stairs, and as soon as you entered, you were smacked in the face with this giant transcendental. So I sort of walked in and saw that, and it was like, whoa, okay, this is serious stuff. And
took you to Introverted, didn't do things by half, hey?
No. And yeah, so I sat through the first class, the introductory class, just basically staring at that, and I don't know, it was an intense thing, but I had a connection to it. I felt something in it, And Jogger also he's such a charmer. So he won me over totally as well. But I kind of knew even in that first class, I knew I'd found home. That was the feeling I got.
That's amazing,
I'm home.
Isn't it? Yeah. Isn't that amazing? Yeah.
Yeah.
Jogger is a charmer.
It didn't really matter what happened in the classes. Yeah. I was a signer from the first day.
And so then what's happened? You were in the centre for how long?
I was in the centre for 13 years, from 1993 till 2006. But I moved to Melbourne.
You almost immediately... Yeah, right, okay. Yep.
Moved to Melbourne, yeah. So... And that was
How did you find that transition from...
It just flowed, It was an intuitive sort of thing. It flowed, but the only thing is I seemed to have an extraordinarily long layover period in finding out whether I was accepted or not. And I started going into a bit of doubt. I thought, well, God, I guess he's, if he's this kind of guy that's aware of everything, he probably knows all about my drinking and my drugs, and so I'm probably not of the cut that he's looking for. So I sort of started having a few doubts. And so I couldn't go to the centre because I wasn't actually accepted as a disciple for a while. I'm pretty sure I applied in February or March. Must have been February, yeah. But I didn't find out until April, celebration time. Hanging around just going classes. Kishore and Prashanta said, yeah, just come along to the classes and, we'll hear sooner or later if you've been accepted or not. And had a very powerful Christ experience before my first class, because I was still meditating on this little picture of the Christ. I didn't have any pictures of Guru or anything like that, or transcendental. So I was sitting down looking at pictures, sort of thinking, God, am I going to be accepted, or is this really the right thing for me? And I went into another one of those kind of unity consciousness states, Um, and in that state, I clearly heard, I guess, the voice of Christ, or a voice, an inner voice, saying, "My brother will take care of you." And when I heard that my brother will take care of you thing, I just sort of jolted awake. And the really freaky thing, this is kind of a little bit of a freakish thing, is the little picture of the Christ that I'd had turned to ash.
No.
It had,
no,
yeah,
really?
It had, yeah, really. It really had. Yeah. It gives me, I mean, that thing gives me the chills to this day. It was kind of like saying, "You don't need my picture anymore. I'm not, yeah." And no, there wasn't a candle near it or anything like that.
Yeah, I can identify with this a lot because I had an affinity with Christ before coming to Guru, and I felt that Christ said to me, when I was coming, I felt that Christ said to me, "I'm not your Guru, but I'll show him to you in a couple of days." And I had that feeling that it was Christ, and the awareness of this might actually be Christ. That was so. It was like one of those dreams where suddenly you just kind of process what happened, and you say to yourself, "Oh my God, that was, I don't know, some profound experience." But while it's happening, you don't kind of realize it is.
Yeah, I wasn't sure I was waking up from a dream or what was going on.
Yeah,
and the really interesting thing is, so I went that night to my first meditation class in Melbourne, and
you're just cutting out on me a little bit. Just tell us again. You went to your first meditation class in Melbourne, and what happened?
And the guy taking the class was a guy called Lee Blashke. And so he did the class and sat there, and I enjoyed it and everything. And at the end of the class, about to leave, and he said, hey, you've come from New Zealand, haven't you? And I said, yeah. And he goes, "I don't know why, but when I was leaving home today, I just had the feeling I had to give you this." And it was this really beautiful photo of Guru. So I think it was the Ranjana smiling photo that Ranjana took of Guru at the back of the court there. But I loved it, and I connected with it immediately. And it was just like, so I lost one photo, and there's the one to replace it, and this is the new guy. So I knew it.
That's so amazing, isn't it?
And I knew again. Yeah, I'm in the right place. So, and then finding out I was a disciple, actually.
And so
that has a bit of a connection with you, mate.
What did I do?
Well, Health Strength Flights. So I was living in Richmond, just at the back of Health Strength Flights. That was where my flat was.
Health Strength Flights, for those of you who don't know, was our baked potato cafe that we ran for a little while in Richmond, and it was a very successful enterprise. But anyway, you keep going.
Great little place. Anyway, I didn't know it had anything to do with the centre, and I went in there and to get a baked potato, and I was sitting there, and I noticed that there were some Janakalas around, and then I saw a couple of pictures of Guru, and then I saw meditation classes, and I thought, God, this is something to do with Sri Chinmoy. And then people behind seemed to have this kind of nice consciousness light around them. And while I was there placing my order, I got the feeling. Right? Can't remember whether you were there or not, actually. Pushpendra was there. He served me. And but I got in the middle of placing my order, I got this feeling I've got to go home. So I must have seemed like a madman. I said, "I'm sorry, I've got to go. Ran out the door, ran home, got to the front door of my home, and the phone was ringing. And it was a call from New Zealand from my friend in New Zealand, my former girlfriend, Leanne. And she said, "Hey," and she'd done the classes with me. And she said, "Hey, you've been accepted And I just was like, I was just like so happy. And then she said, "Oh, and so have I." And I was like, "What?" I didn't even know that she had actually applied. And I was
Wow,
like,
wow,
"Oh,
wow, wow.
that's great, yeah, yeah." And yeah, that's a
So what
controversial
was your
thing.
relationship with what was your relationship with her at this point then?
Well, we
Your
had
former
been boyfriend
girlfriend,
and
you had to
girlfriend,
split with the job.
and went to the centre. But I knew I was going to Melbourne, so we were splitting up. Um, but yeah, really good friends. Definitely a soul connection there. Um, but when I heard it, I just kind of spontaneously, without thinking about it, said, "Oh, why don't you come to New Zealand and we'll do this thing together?" We had no idea about any rules. So that threw a massive in the works for
I,
Keisha, Shanta, and Jogata and Shubarata.
I bet it did.
Um, yeah. But
So tell
so
us a
we
little bit
obviously
about
went to very big.
your experience. Sorry, Dhanyavada. Tell us a little bit about your experience as a disciple and how that all panned out. You had 13 years, you're saying. So was it
Yeah.
all roses or
Uh, Gee, I'd like to say yes, but I can't. I was really into it, and I was really inspired, and it was just what I was looking for. I mean, I'd been quite an undisciplined fellow when I was younger, and I knew I needed a bit of discipline. I knew I needed a bit of authority and a bit of direction. So all of that was good. Although I was angry at finding out about celibacy, at the same time I'd been reading a lot of philosophy. It was something I was thinking about, so I accepted it. Leanne and we actually became married, and we both accepted that part of it. Yeah, I threw myself into manifestation as much as I could. Went to a lot of the classes just as a helper, and really enjoyed it for a long time. My meditation, the great thing is that the pain in my third eye just disappeared because I was focusing in the heart more. My meditation made a lot more sense to me. I really enjoyed that experience of meditating in a group of people. So the first few years were really good, although it was a really challenging situation. You're totally transforming your life. You're giving up a lot of stuff. You're sort of, in a way, you're in the world, but you're separating yourself from the world a bit. You're focusing yourself, and that was a huge change. So quite challenging, but one that I was up for. And the people in the centre too, I've got to say, most of them, that they were so supportive and just really quite genuine people, and I really love the fact that we all shared something in common, that we're all kind of aiming in the same direction. That was a wonderful feeling for me. It did really felt like a family and felt like home for me, which was something that's what I was looking for in a lot of ways.
when did it start to go pear-shaped then, mate? What was the problem then? Was it were you having fantastic experiences, but they weren't being matched by the integrity of the centre, or how did it pan out for you?
It kind of happened gradually. I one of the negatives for the centre for me was I understand that we were supposed to be, it was done to focus us on the positive and on the light and all of that, but you almost had to be a superhuman to do that. And so there was no real forum for talking about having negative feelings or negative thoughts, for being at all emotional. There was kind of no one that you could go to and talk about it. It was kind of frowned on, And if you did talk about it with someone, you were basically told, oh, just go for a run, or just smile more, or just get involved in something. It was kind of
Yeah.
so it was kind of, and especially around the sexual thing. And that was a big one for me. Um, the the whole thing of taking on celibacy was something I wanted to do because I'd had quite a struggle with sexuality, and that I was always very sexual in that way, a lot of libido, and I thought, this is something I don't want to take control of me. So that's why I was quite keen on looking at celibacy. But at the same time, you couldn't talk about it. So there was no support structure for
it seems
how do you transmute this energy? What do you do with it? And if you are struggling with it, you can't talk to anyone. That was, for me, that was one of the hardest things, was the fact that it really reinforced the Christian impurity thing that I'd had from church and from Dad. So that I didn't want. And in the end, that was probably one of the key reasons I left, is because I reached this point where I realized, to be human and to be myself, I need to be honest about this. And I need to feel comfortable about this. I need to feel real about this. So I realized to be like that didn't really match with the center. I couldn't do that in the center. So that
right.
was one of the.
You've hit upon something that's really quite profound, isn't it? That to actually exist within the center, we were creating a lot of things, or hiding a lot of things within ourselves, weren't we? To be able to survive, you had to kind of push a lot of stuff down and not think about stuff and not talk about stuff, and
Yeah, there's all this stuff about being a divine warrior, but it was almost inhuman.
Yeah, it's a very male way of looking at things, isn't it? I just think it creates emotional cripples in the end. But anyway, so what was the culmination of all this? How did you actually come to a point where you said, I'm going to leave?
It grew slowly, and one experience was my last trip to New York. I was encouraged to go by Keisha and Prashanta because Guru had been asking about me, which was kind of an indication that you might get your spiritual name, or something like that. Because at that stage I was running my own enterprise, which was a yoga enterprise, which I loved. That's something that Guru gave me, which I really, really appreciate. So I went there, and Guru called all the Aussies down in front of him, and he was talking about the enterprises and stuff, and then he started talking about my enterprise, but it was as if I wasn't there. He was talking to everyone else and about, so how's the yoga studio, and I was trying to cut in and say, oh, well, actually, Guru, it's mine, and and it was just like I wasn't there, and it just kind of, it felt like, geez, I don't exist, I'm not really meant, somehow I'm not meant to be here anymore. And I've been asking that question of myself. But the thing is, to leave the center was a really difficult thing, because 13 years it was my life. Everything of me was in there. My partner was in there, my occupation was in there, my friends were in there, everything was in there. So it was like the thought of leaving, just even the thought of leaving was like jumping without a safety net, which was pretty flippin' scary.
Yeah, it's profound, isn't it? Because all of your emotional support is in there, isn't there? All of the ways you think about your own ego and who you are and how you exist in the world is all in there as well, isn't it?
Plus, there's this story that you get in the center, which is that there's nothing for you out there, and the world beyond the center is full of hostiles, and it's vacuous and empty and meaningless, and that you're meant to be a disciple. You're meant to be in the center. That was the hard bit of programming to break free of. It just made it so much more scary.
So how did you break free?
Right. Well, in the end, I couldn't talk to anyone in the centre about it. I tried. I did send a letter to Guru, a very frank letter to Guru through Ashrita, and I got an answer back from that quite quickly, which was basically saying either you need to leave the centre you're in, or if that's not an option, then it was very nice. It was, whatever you do, I shall always love you. And that really touched me. That gave me the feeling like, okay, I can do this. But I still needed to talk to someone to get to the point where I could say to Kishore and Prashanta, I'm leaving. So the only choice I had, because I couldn't talk to anyone in the centre, was to talk to someone outside of the centre. And I had a colleague that I was working with who had also been in a few spiritual groups, and I kind of connected with her a bit, and I thought, yeah, I can talk to this girl. So I arranged to meet her at a cafe, quite a way out of Melbourne, in a place called Daylesford, because I thought, I don't want to. So I went and had this meeting with her, and talking to her for a few hours, and I finally got up the courage and the clarity to go, yeah, I need to get out of here. I need to be myself, and I need to be honest with myself, and I need to start accepting myself. So I went back for centre meditation on Sunday that night, and I was just getting changed, and there was a knock on the front door, and it was Kishore, and he was looking really agitated, pale as a ghost, and he said, mate, tell me it's not true. And I said, what, Kishore? He said, you've been seen with a girl. And I couldn't believe it. Light went on inside my head, and I thought, this is it. This is the easy way out. This is my easy out. And I just said, yeah, I'm leaving. Tell Guru I'm leaving. And he went. That was it. And then I got a phone call a few hours later. Yeah.
Just to give people some background on this, Daylesford is a good hour, by at least an hour by car away from.
At least an hour
from Melbourne, and Melbourne has 4 million people in it, and Daylesford is this little town outside of Melbourne. So somehow they didn't have a whole lot of people in the Melbourne centre, I'm sure, but somehow some spy has been able to track you down. It's amazing, isn't it? Yeah,
pure chance that someone was out there and they saw me. And yeah, it was an easy out, so I didn't deny it. I went for it. I went, yep, that's true. And so
then what happens? You get out of the centre
I had a day to get out of the centre, which meant a day to close. And the tricky thing for me was that the centre was my home. In other words, I had an apartment in there. It was my enterprise as well. So, it was everything. So I had to get out of there. I had a day to get out.
Who gave you a day?
I had to pack everything up and get out. Yeah, Kishore gave me a day.
Who told you that?
Kishore.
Yeah, that's amazing.
He said you need to be out. So that was everything. So I packed up all my yoga mats and everything and my belongings, and I got out. And went and stayed with. Luckily, I had a couple of people who had been coming to my yoga classes who were very kind and generous, and they put me up. So that was. But I really went for a short while. I really went into an abyss. I really felt like I'd lost everything, down a hole. Really short while. So I tried to keep the yoga going, but it just didn't pan out.
Well, so then what happens, Dhanyavada? Because I've seen, these beautiful pictures of your wonderful wife now, Banu.
Yeah,
Beautiful pictures of your wedding on our
I
Facebook
got lucky.
group. And so, what happened? What happened in the since 2006 to now 2014 or 15? Sorry.
Oh, so much. What an experience. It's um, finding my own feet again has just been an amazing, amazing experience. You know, and the interesting thing is at the bottom of that abyss, I discovered that the consciousness that I associated with Sri Chinmoy was actually me. You
Mm,
know, it was
that's
actually
profound,
me.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I honor him for connecting me to that, and I have to say I'm very devoted to that consciousness. Um, that's something really beautiful that he gave to me. This feeling of a love that exists beyond condition. That's always there for you, no matter what you do, no matter what you go through. It's always there inside you. And that.
That's
So
very profound too, Dhanyavada, because that's thinking about what you're saying. That's I think my first kind of yeah my first embrace of unconditional love. I think that actually came from Guru. And you saying you found it within yourself. I know what you mean as well. I mean, he's able to find that space within me, and you're saying it's
yeah,
within you. Yeah, I think
yeah,
that's
he
very
drew it
profound.
out of me. I think in the beginning when I was joining the center, I needed to see that personified. I couldn't believe it was in me. I just couldn't connect to it. So I needed to see it personified. So that's kind of the role that Guru played for me. But I have to say,
Mm,
in all honesty, I never really quite trusted Guru. the person, right? The consciousness, I absolutely,
that's amazing.
absolutely trusted, like emphatically trusted the consciousness. But because I'd always questioned authority, I questioned his authority over me, always. Never entirely questioned every rule and challenged some of the rules sometimes too. You know, um,
Look,
so
I think that's amazing you say that because that's a really good, again, a really good way of describing it. That you trusted the consciousness, but not the man. And I think I had a similar feeling. I think I know exactly what you're saying.
the man did some great things. I mean, in that body, in that vehicle, that consciousness was able to do some really interesting, really inspiring things. There was a lot of stuff there that inspired me. The aphorisms that came through the day still just um, yeah, and that's an attitude I took when I left too. I didn't want my spiritual life to end there. I didn't want it to be, well, you left Chinmoy Centre, so your spiritual life down the gutter. I didn't believe that story. I was determined to keep my spiritual life going, so I recognized that there are a lot of good things that I got from the centre, a lot of wisdom, a lot of experiences, things that I never thought I'd do, and I was just determined to stick with it and to keep using them. So I didn't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Um, yeah. So I kept
Mm,
going with the things that worked for me, but I also felt free. I felt like now I can pick and choose the things that actually work for me, and I don't have to do all of it.
mm,
Whereas in the sense, I felt
mm.
like I had to do all of it, even if it didn't resonate.
So how did you keep it together? How did you continue to live your spiritual life after leaving the centre?
Dedication to that consciousness. I just
Mm,
entrusted myself fully into that consciousness. It's all I had. It's all I had left. I had nothing else actually. So I had to.
mm,
I was
mm.
thrown into a situation where I had to rely entirely on my connection with the inner consciousness. There's nothing else, nothing outer to rely on anymore. And that was profound. That was awesome. That's like one of the
It's
best things I've ever experienced.
mm.
It gave me so much
And
strength
all right
and
then. So when did things settle down for you? Because 2006 you left and you said you went into an abyss, and then what happened? And can you kind of give people that perhaps are in the centre right now and thinking about what have I got to go through to actually leave,
Right.
and how long is it going to take me to heal, and that sort of thing. Can you give people a kind of a bit of a timeline, I guess, of how long it was before you felt like you were getting happy again and getting yourself
Not
together
long.
again?
Not long. Once I had that experience that I'm loved, and that I am love, and that it's all in me still, and that I can hang on to all the good stuff. Once I got that, I was fine. I mean, it worked that I could do really well, but I discovered swim coaching, and I became a really good swim coach, and it pays well. So that helped me dig me out of my debts. There are incredibly kind, loving people out there in the world, and they're like guardian angels. They come when you need them. They're there. There's always someone there. And yeah, I mean, I missed aspects of the centre. Friends in the centre was the hardest one, but it came together quite quickly. There was a sort of feeling of loneliness a little bit, in that not being quite able to connect with people, and that led me to seeking other people who had left the centre. And started slowly connecting with others and hearing their stories, and that gave me courage and confidence to keep going. And I realized, no, I'm going to be all right. And in the meantime, my dad was passing away, so I moved from Melbourne back to New Zealand to be closer to my family, and that was a really nice thing too, to reconnect with my family after so many years of being quite distant. So that was awesome.
That's a common experience too, isn't it?
Yeah.
And common experience with the disciples is that they dissociate themselves from their families, and in leaving the centre are able to kind of rediscover their families again, people that love them.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, and I was very lucky to find a site called Abode of Yoga, and
this is
Yoga Loy's blog. Yeah, absolutely. And through that, I started connecting with others, and connected with this person. At first, it was just a person, and they were writing from Turkey, from Istanbul, and they seemed to quite like what I was writing, and I liked what they were writing. And we became Facebook friends, and it turned out to be a girl, and it turned out to be a former disciple, and that was Banu. That's my wonderful wife, Banu, my mate. And it was a real godsend. And even that, I have to say, I'm kind of grateful to Sri Chinmoy for hooking that up for us as well.
That's great. All right, mate. Look, let's wrap it up. I'll just like to say to you, to get things kind of in summary, is there anything else you wanted to say about perhaps to people, getting out, or perhaps that are out and that are involved with these forums that you're talking about?
Yeah. For people who are maybe not out and wanting to be, you can do it. There is life. The story that there is nothing after the centre it's not true. There is, and I've found, actually, for me, the whole experience of being the centre didn't come alive until I was out of the centre. Then it all started to make sense and come alive and be worthwhile, be useful. I'm using it now. It's actually, it's more alive in me now than it was when I was there. And I feel more connected to that consciousness now than I was there.
That's great.
That's I think that's really it for me. It's and it just keeps on going, keeps blossoming, and there's this wonderful. I guess for me, that the legacy that Sri Chinmoy left my impression is that the real legacy of Sri Chinmoy is us. It's the disciples. It's the family. I mean, it's the most beautiful thing I've ever experienced. It's a real treasure. And yeah, I mean, there's some dubious things
I
about
agree,
his
mate.
nature.
I've got to say, yeah, I agree, and I've got to say, you know, this group is that Yogalai and Swadina put together is really helping in the process of us getting back
Absolutely.
our families. You know, not only our human family, but our spiritual family. It's lovely, so lovely to just be able to connect again, isn't it?
It is. It's a real treasure, and I count people in who are still there very much as part of that. I try to have contact with them in whatever way I can through going to enterprises and stuff like that, and just keeping a positive connection. And I really hope that one day we can form a bridge. You know, that all the barriers can melt. That's my dream. That's what I'd love to see. That we can really be that oneness family that we are.
That's lovely, mate. All right, I'm going to say thanks a lot, Dhanyavada. I really enjoyed our conversation and really enjoyed the opportunity to have a chat to you. And I've always known you were something very special, and you've shown that in the interview, and I really enjoyed it. So thanks a lot, mate. I think it's past midnight down over there in New Zealand. So thanks a lot for staying up and having a chat. Really enjoyed it, and I hope everybody else enjoys it too.
So do I. Thank you very much, mate.
Okay, I'm hitting stop broadcast, buddy.